Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Batesman, the Content Director at SheCanCode, and today we're discussing staying ahead of the curve in the rapidly changing world of AI. Staying ahead of the curve is necessary if you want to prosper and achieve in business. It not only enables you to survive in business, but to thrive as well. But how do you stay ahead in the rapidly changing world of AI? Luckily, I've got the fabulous Arianna Saracino, AI Engineering Manager at GraphCore, with me today to share her journey so far, stepping up to become a manager, and the importance of staying ahead of the curve in the ever-evolving field of AI. Welcome, Arianna.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today.
Good. I'm so pleased that you joined us. Very topical topic that we're going to talk about today. So we haven't actually spoken about this on the podcast as yet, so it's going to be a good one. Can we kick off though with a bit of background to set the scene, a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into tech, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently an AI engineering manager at GraphCore. I am based in Bristol in UK, where there is the HQ of the company. But as you may be able to spot from my accent, I'm Italian. So I was born in the sunny south of Italy, and then I moved for my studies to Pisa in Tuscany, where I studied biomedical engineering. I then stayed in Pisa, I did my PhD in biorobotics. And during my PhD, I had the opportunity to be a visiting student in Imperial College in London. And that's why I moved to the UK for the first time. And at that point, I basically never came back. I interviewed for GraphCore almost 5 years ago for a role of product support engineer, and I moved to Bristol for that job. So that's how I got into working into tech and working for GraphCore in the first place. However, when I started university, I didn't necessarily know, what kind of job I would have ended up taking by becoming a biomedical engineer. So in my experience in Italy, there is a big lack of getting exposed to professional figures when you attend high school or even during university. So when I think about what is the main role model engineer that I knew at the time, those were mainly the fathers of some of my friends who were working in more traditional engineering fields like the mechanical engineers or the chemical engineers. So I think that this lack of exposure combined with the engineering degrees being very, very theoretical in Italy. So we have a lot of very big exams, written examinations, big books to study, and a lot of theorems to demonstrate rather than having practical projects to complete. So all these elements gave me absolutely no clue about what kind of job I would have ended up doing when I graduated. What I knew was that I really enjoying the subject that I was studying and the problem-solving aspect of what I was studying. So what kept me going ultimately was really the ideal that one day I would be able to apply all these technical concepts that I was studying with the goal of improving healthcare. So it could have been in the field of improving hospital management, prosthesis design, bioinformatics. We touched on really a lot of different topics. And so this was the main ideal that motivated me to start a PhD in surgical robotics right after I graduated my master. And this field felt really, really exciting to me because it puts together a really multidisciplinary team of engineers and physician surgeons to improve technical surgical tools and procedures. And for me, the possibility of working in an environment that is quite complex, quite varied, is something that I always found suited me really a lot, because I really enjoy having the big pictures of things rather than being a specialist. So during my PhD, I really learned a lot about, communicating with different experts coming from different kind of backgrounds, and also about designing and executing my goals, as I was mainly working by myself on a big solo project. And I think all the people that have done a PhD in the audience, I think that there is a common degree of, being really stubborn that one needs to complete a PhD. So the stubbornness, I think in my case, was also due to the fact that unfortunately, I didn't feel like I was really well supported while I was doing my PhD. I was working in an environment that was really very competitive and not always the most encouraging. This was back in Italy. However, when I moved to London, to Imperial College, it was 6 months of abroad period. And I rediscovered all of the, positive aspects of being a researcher, because I found a really supportive environment. My tutor really believed in my ideas. They were really highly valued, and I had much more freedom also to experiment and to explore, which I think should be really the point of doing a PhD.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. Oh, it's nice that you found that positivity again after you had moved. And it sounded like the way that you spoke about what you studied, that you had a real passion for STEM subjects, even as a young person. Was that something that had people in your family been, you know, had they been in STEM subjects, or is that just unique to you as a child that you thought, you know, this is the direction that I'll go in?
yeah, I think it's been quite unique to me, actually, because my parents follow very different career paths. Like my mom is a teacher of more humanistic subjects, so she always pushed me in kind of the opposite direction. When I was much younger, I really liked to write as well and to learn different languages when I was in school. And I think I was a bit better in those subjects than what I was in like maths specifically. But during high school, I found really great teachers that kind of showed me that, you know, I could do it as well. And I started becoming more passionate about those when I was a little bit older in high school rather than really as a child. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. It's you hear that encouragement in a teacher, and then, you know, you start to run with those subjects. In terms of your day-to-day at GraphCore, can you give us an insight of what your day-to-day role is like and how it fits into the wider scope of GraphCore?
Yeah, of course. So I thought I would start by giving a quick overview of what we do. So GraphCore has designed a chip specifically for machine learning workload, which is called the IPU, so Intelligent Processing Unit. I work in the engineering team at GraphCore. So in the team, we have a really remarkable mix of skills, mostly around software engineering. And we work at different levels of the software stack. So the software stack basically allows you to program the IPU chip. So within my team, you can find engineers working at the lowest level of the stack. So they contribute to the C++ libraries or to the machine learning frameworks that we use, as well as more MLOps infrastructure type of experts, and also applications engineers, which I'd say is the closest to what my team and my expertise lies. So our role in the AI applications team is to port and optimize AI and machine learning applications using the proprietary software that comes with the IPU, so the popular SDK. And this involves at time collaborating with customers, collecting the requirements and their needs, at the same time understanding the state of the art of AI, which is, as we will talk about, you know, really rapidly changing and evolving, and also keeping up with all the breakthroughs and all the new tools in AI is really important in my role. We also work quite in close collaboration with the product team and with the research team. So being an engineering manager in the engineering group at this moment, I really enjoy the fact about my role that I can have a kind of 50-50% split between technical contribution and people management, which is not always the easiest to balance, but it's what ultimately is keeping me really interested and motivated in my job. So for me, having people management responsibilities, it means that in my day-to-day, I have to be people first when I prioritize my work items. So that's what I aim to do. I am not to be, you know, in the absolute critical path for delivery, so that I can be present for my team as my top priority when and if they need me. At the same time, the other element to balance is that I want to be credible in my role for the engineers in my team to feel like they're talking still to another engineer, just with a different set of responsibilities at this point in time in my career rather than theirs. And then that they're not just talking to a detached manager that doesn't really have a clue about what their projects are about. So also for myself, for myself and for the team, I really like understanding in depth the mission of GraphCore. And so to do so, I feel that for me, it means being really involved in the project, and that's quite essential rather than having a more hands-off vision of it. Another element that I think is important in this is that it's still my first job really in my career, even though I changed a few different roles at GraphCore, is still my first employer right after my academic career. So I feel that it's too early for me to stop working or to stop improving my technical skills. And I love learning new things in general. So I really try to keep my work as hands-on as practical as I can. I try to do something hands-on every day, even if it is, you know, just a small change to keep it up, not to lose the habit to be hands-on, and to use the product that we design as often as possible so that I can stay up to date with all our technical tools and our technical processes.
And it sounds like you have an incredibly varied role as well, that you said, you know, you're really hands-on, you're really involved in everything. Did you think it was going to be that hands-on when you joined, or did you have kind of a preconceived vision of what you thought, you know, working in tech was going to be like? It sounds like you work with lots of teams.
Yeah, so I think that the role has evolved to become like this. And I have also to thank, higher up management to give me the chance to shape the role in the way that I want it to be. I think that the engineering manager role can be this, but it can also be much more hands-off. And there are surely some benefits in doing that as well. Surely if I had a much bigger team, I wouldn't practically have the chance of, doing more hands-on role. And I think in the past, when I used to manage a different set of engineers, when my team was around 9 or 10 engineers, I definitely didn't have any time to do any hands-on work. So right now we're working with a little bit smaller sizes team. So I have 5 engineers in my team. And I feel that that's kind of the sweet spot to allow me to still find some time. And, I found that also how I organize my time is really crucial to make sure that I find those big chunks in my calendar and in my day to make sure that I can focus. And for me to be doing technical work, it means, I need no interruptions, I need no context switch, and I just need those, a few hours in a row to be able to make sure that I can focus.
Yes, I bet. Yes, it's important to set those boundaries with people and block out that time. Can you tell us about your steps? So you went from contributor to a manager. So what are the differences and the things that you enjoy most about it?
Yeah. So first thing, I think that for me, becoming a people manager wasn't really a plan that I had in mind for myself. At the time, I was 3 years. It was 3 years ago during COVID times in 2020, and I was working as a product support engineer. So it's my first role in GraphCore. I was interacting a lot with external customers, really being the front line of support. And as I said, this was my first role in the industry. I was facing a very, very steep learning curve. I wasn't coming from a computer science or a machine learning background. And every day I had to interact with very high-end researchers doing really cutting edge research on machine learning and AI. So I think that in general, I was always quite keen to look at the big picture of the scope of the work that we were doing. I had started to take quite naturally some more project management activities within my team, just naturally. For example, handling our internal prioritization scheme, handling the triage of the issues that arrived in, kind of conditioning them, interacting with product leads or with software leads to be able to solve customers' issues as quickly as we could. At the same time, there was a really big growth in GraphCore during 2019 and in my team as well. So when I joined, I was like the second engineer in the team, and we're at being like 13, 14 people in the team. So my manager at the time, he really needed to start adding a layer of management. So he couldn't possibly manage all those people by himself. So I think there was this opportunity to step up, and I really have to thank him, because at the time he really believed in me. He thought that this team lead role could have suited me, and he offered it. And so I decided, okay, let's give this a go. I was obviously really scared when I started, especially having one-to-ones with colleagues that until the day before they were peers, and suddenly they were not peers anymore. I was their manager. I really feared I was going to be way out of my depth, and that I probably didn't really deserve this. For example, when others in my team or outside would congratulate me for my promotion, I didn't really see it as a promotion. I really rather see it as I'm changing path, as I never felt like I was, the strongest contributor in our team, but probably my manager saw some other kind of skills, some potential to develop some other skills in me. And so he gave me this opportunity. So I feel that I really learned a lot of good practices from him, from my first manager. And at the time, with time, I'm looking to find, and I think that I found my own management style. So I started from some really good background and some really good concept that he taught me in a way. And then I brought them further to adapt them to my personality. So I think after 3 years that it's definitely the right track for me. I think it comes pretty naturally to me. And I have adapted after the first, few months of being quite scared about it. I adapted pretty smoothly. So I think that the main difference when I was an individual contributor is that you have to accept the fact that everyone you manage will be probably a better developer and a better contributor than what you are. So I was already coming into this job with a big imposter syndrome. So I was quite at peace with never, I never had a very big ego to defeat on this front. But you have to kind of settle with the realization that your success is no longer measured with how much you thrive, or how much you contribute, or how good your contributions are. But now I thrive when my team members are successful, and that's what I enjoy the most. So I really enjoy supporting them, coaching them, and being really there for them, being an advocate for them when they need it, and ultimately really celebrating their successes.
I love the fact that you just mentioned that you think differently. You have to now thrive as a team, not as an individual. That's quite a mind shift, isn't it, for some people? And some people don't thrive in that environment, which is absolutely fine as well.
Exactly.
But you're right. I suppose it's finding your own style, and being able to make that switch mentally is quite a challenge for some people. It's so interesting as well that you said that it was your manager that put you forward. I hear that so often. I think that's something we do as ladies. We don't always put ourselves forward for jobs that if we were speaking to a colleague and we would say, you'd be absolutely fantastic for that, but we don't realize ourselves actually we would be really good in that role. And the fact that you mentioned imposter syndrome, as soon as you said it, I was thinking, yes, imposter syndrome. I have felt that way. We've all felt that way. It was absolutely natural feeling.
I think we resonate with, it does resonate with a lot of people and a lot of, female engineers in the tech industry. The feeling of having to, tick all the boxes before you apply for a job, rather than just trying, even if you don't tick all the boxes, but maybe you're missing on one or two boxes. So
yes,
sometimes you need a little bit of a push, especially in the beginning of your career.
Yes, it sounded like you had the right manager as well.
I did.
Pushed you in a direction as well that you wanted to go. I found that with some managers, they will push because they think they're doing the right thing. It might not actually be the right thing for the employer, for the employee, but yours seemed to know you pretty well, that they were thinking you're just going to be really good at this.
Yes, I think he really read me and the people around him very well. So he's really a great people manager in that sense, because he's really able to bring out the best of the potential in the people that he manages. So
yeah. And on that note, is there anything that you'd wish you'd been told before you became a manager? Anything that you think our listeners would find useful to hear if they were thinking about making a move very soon?
Yes, quite a few things, actually. So I'll start from something practical that I also kind of mentioned in passing before. So something I learned the hard way is really time management. Time management is so key. So something you might expect, but you only realize it really when it happens, is when you become a manager, suddenly you look at your calendar and your calendar will magically start filling up with meetings. So whether those are meetings that you organize, I'd recommend really trying out different patterns to organize them and finding out what works for you. For example, with my one-to-one calendar, one-to-ones with my team, at the beginning, I tried to have all the one-to-ones in a day. So to have one-to-ones day, that was not a very good idea for me in my work for others. So the context switching was really, really draining for me. And I found like I was penalizing the people with whom I was having one-to-ones later on in the day, because I was less fresh. I had all my thoughts from previous conversations with the previous engineers. And so I really found, okay, I really need to find another solution for this. Also, like allowing larger slot meetings, meeting free time to focus on the technical work is really important and crucial for me. And I found that booking it out in the calendar, making sure that you commit to it, really helps. I think that, not necessarily all the managers, as we said earlier, will want to stay technical, but that time can be used for anything. So if not to code, you can always think about challenges that you might be facing in that point in time. Really give the brain some space to just stop, and that really helps coming up with new ideas, for example. And related to that, you can delegate. That's another thing that I'm finding out and slowly adapting to. You can delegate. You don't have to go to all the meetings in your calendar. You can find some people that help you in your team. They'll be happy to help you, and don't be afraid to ask in this sense.
That's quite a shift in itself, isn't it? Just delegating to somebody else. It's very unusual, especially if you're used to managing a big workload and you do it all, and then thinking, it's okay. I'm not pushing things off. I'm delegating to my team. It's a very strange moment when you step into management.
Yeah, you might feel, you don't want to do it at first because it feels like, it's something that you should do and it feels like you're stepping back, but it's not. You really need to delegate some of the things, and it kind of empowers the people in the team to stepping up as well, and they might find some aspect of the job that they want to develop on because of this delegation that you're doing in that moment. So it's not only benefiting you, but also the person that you're feeling that there is the trust in their skills to be able to cover for you in that moment. So they'll feel that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, just giving them the opportunity to step into the light and to be able to try something new that you might have been holding on to yourself. A lot of founders of companies say that, don't they? It's quite hard to let go of the control, especially if it's something as important, for instance, a founder of a company, but even of your team and the success of your team, to let go and give things to other people. But as you said, they step up if you believe that they have the skills. Then you're just inviting them to shine. Really good point.
So I think that if someone is thinking about or has the opportunity to step up and becoming a manager, I think don't be afraid to try it out, because once you think about the real motivation behind you wanting to be a manager, if it is more about, the idea, as we were saying earlier, you might be more in control. Well, truth is, even if the sphere of your influence will increase a bit, you won't really be in charge on deciding on, big process changing or big tooling changes. So you will be confronted with problems to solve outside of your direct sphere of influence as well. And at that point, you will need to step out a bit of your comfort zone in a sense, and reaching out, connecting to colleagues in different business units. So there will be hurdles. You won't have all the control that you can imagine in your hands, and you will have to try to focus on the potential solutions rather than on the obstacles. So something that we really try to do in my team is okay, there is a problem, but what if I'm going to my manager with just the problem, I challenge myself to also go to him with also some possible solutions to the problem, so that we can go from there and move together. So if you're only interested, in authority and control, maybe this is not the right move to do. But if your interest is more around developing, coaching, supporting the people around you, or also to look at the business from a different perspective that is not just the engineering lens, but it's something broader than that, I think that you probably are on the right track, and you're always on time to get back into that individual contributor role if you find that after a few months the management role doesn't suit you, or you find that you felt more comfortable in the individual contributor one.
Yes, and that's okay too. As you said, if you find that it's not for you, then that's okay. As you said, you don't know until you give it a go. I think we all have in our minds, don't we, what we think leadership is going to be like, and sometimes that's from what you've seen previously and what you've seen from other managers, but you really don't know until you try it. And as you said, you find your own style, instead of emulating others, and what works for your team. And that's okay to have a little time, realize you don't need to know everything. As you said, booking in all of those meetings as well, that you have to be everywhere for everyone and expected to know everything, is something I've heard a lot from ladies, not just ladies, but people who have stepped into leadership for the first time, not quite knowing what's going to happen and how they can settle into the role. In terms of skills and qualifications, though, do you think there are any that are particularly important to your roles? To your role, I would think you would say they're going to be, you have to have very technical qualifications, but are soft skills just as important to this role as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that for sure the technical, coding skills, so either Python, C++, so both are important. And those are elements that we look for in candidates for sure. So I think a technical background also for an engineering manager is important, is essential to be able to interact and to coach effectively the people in the team. However, I'm a perfect example for this because I was not a software developer by background, and I didn't have any machine learning background either when I joined the company. So I think they're showing, the passion, the curiosity, and really being keen to learn and to apply new technologies are very, very strong components that the employers will spot. They will just see it in you, right? And they will be able, if they're good employers, to develop in you, in the candidates further. So when leading a team as well, I think that you're gonna need to have a completely different set of skills on top of the technical expertise. And I think it resonates with what we were saying earlier as well. So having at heart the best interest of the team in the context of the business is really important, as well as being a very good listener. So listening to your team, listening to the challenges that they have, and being their advocate with higher up management. Being an engineering manager, my level is a bit being in between, right? You're listening to the needs of the team and you're in contact with higher up management. So you're trying to mediate between the two parts, and it's quite challenging at times. So I think that the important thing is to show to your team that you have the best interest and the best intent to do the right thing. And this might not always lead to the best outcome. As I said, the control that you have and the power that you have is not really a lot, but the transparency and the transparency in communicating with the team as much as you can and empowering them to be able to make their own choices in how they contribute and being flexible, I think that for me is really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the fact that you mentioned about not having to have a technical background and that yourself didn't come from a traditional route. I think especially in your role, you would think you have to come from that heavy hitting computer science, traditional qualification background, or you just can't get in. And I was going to say to you, is it not just you, but there might be other people in your team that have also come from lots of different backgrounds, and actually that's quite common in tech.
Yes, yeah, it is. I think since I joined, that was one of the things that struck me the most, as I was not the only one coming from a different background. So I'm a biomedical engineer. We have quite a few mathematicians, physics as well, and people coming from electronic engineering, and the classic computer scientists that you might expect in an AI company. And I think it's great to have such a variety of backgrounds in the team, because everyone really contributes something unique to the perspective of solving a problem, and everyone really looks with a unique pair of eyes about how to move forward and how to succeed in solving an issue.
Yes, definitely. And in terms of staying ahead of the curve, how important do you think it is to stay ahead stay ahead of the curve in the tech industry, and also in AI? I mean, it's incredibly fast paced. It's super important to stay ahead, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So of course, in general, in technology, the technology really progresses at a very high pace, and the organizations need to keep up and to do it quickly, if they want to be successful. I think in my experience, there is a trade-off, between being able to deliver something with a certain speed while maintaining the standard of the quality that doesn't need to drop because of the speed. So this can be quite tricky. But something that I found really valuable is when I read the Lean Startup book, which is, I think, must read on the topic of, constantly innovating and for succeeding in business. And is the concept of a minimum viable product. That is something that we often try to achieve at GraphCore. So in a few words, it's basically the version of a product that allows a team to collect the maximum amount of learnings from customers with the least effort. So rather than designing and delivering a full-fledged product, we try instead to maximize the amount of learning that we can gather from the product while having a specific set of features that we know struck the interest of certain customers. So it's about moving away from a culture when we say, okay, we have a development team that is like a factory of features development. So they deliver one feature after the other to construct this ideal product that will be based on, some intuition, some hunch about what might the customer want. But we want to just deliver this feature that will make the current sales and the current engagement with customers a bit faster. So we will make that set of early customers really happy, really those early adopters really happy, and they would forgive, in a certain sense, the product for having only a certain amount of feature. But those features will really be important to solve their business problems. And this is just the first iteration of a cycle, right? So you then go back to the customers, you collect some feedback, you analyze the data from the feedback and understand whether you've been building the right thing or not. So in my team, I think one way in which we're coping with the industry moving really quickly is to try to iterate on these cycles, and to introduce a way of working when we aim to produce an MVP, which can be an application, it can be a code examples that has, for example, showing a competitive advantage of our technology versus competitor to solve a specific problem, and we ship this product. So the example might be minimal, it might not be fully fledged, as I said, but it is functional and it proves a point. And then we wait to see what the reaction of the community, of what the customer is. So we collect some stats, we understand whether there is some interest in the customer for us to develop more features or to, for example, add more sophistication to the examples that we provided. And I think that this attitude to produce MVPs is something that for startups particularly is important to establish a certain pace and a speed in the delivery that allows you to keep up with some needs that change constantly and evolve really rapidly.
Yeah, and that takes quite a certain person, doesn't it, to want to work at that pace, so that rapid pace. It takes a certain mindset to want to be part of a business that moves that fast. It's not for everybody. But, you know, it sounds like you have a job that you love and that is very different every day, because it is so fast paced, which who's not going to love that. Personally, though, how do you stay ahead in such a fast paced industry? Does GraphCore, you know, do they provide you with opportunities for learning, dedicated learning time? How do you keep up personally?
Mm-hmm. So I think I've been really, really lucky to find at GraphCore an environment where the learning and the continuous professional development for engineers are highly valued. And this is not just on paper, right? So since I joined in the product support team, my manager at the time set us up so that each team member was encouraged to have 10% of their time set aside to do professional development. So in most cases, this meant for us having an afternoon or a morning a week where we would have some time to pick a side project or enroll in a learning course, online course, or read a book that was relevant for us for some reason. And this has been so important for me because when I joined the company, as I said, I didn't have a machine learning background. I was still working on a part-time basis. I was working 4 days a week. And at the same time, I was writing my PhD thesis on a completely different topic. So that didn't have AI involved. So I used that 10% of my working time to enroll on an online course that gave me the foundation on AI and machine learning. And thanks to my manager, I really was feeling accountable for it, right? Because he asked me how the learning was going, where was I with the learning. And so I pushed myself to have some objectives to achieve within the course during a certain time frame. And in my current team, we have a quite similar arrangement in terms of time dedicated to learning. But the idea behind it is slightly different. So we take all the same half a day a week, which is the Friday afternoon for us at the moment, and we call it discovery time. So we came up with the idea with a summit that we did a couple of months ago. And the concept is for us to be AI users for an afternoon a week. So as we said, AI is really changing super fast. And of all the tech fields, the pace of the progress is probably, you know, the most impressive. And it's also transforming, not just evolving really quickly, but also transforming to be more and more open to consumers. So having this half a day a week gives us the opportunity to try some of the new AI. It can be toolboxes, it can be a framework, a libraries, a paper that we passed in by during the week, but we didn't have the time to explore. And so most engineers in the team are really keen on having this kind of user experience and to use the time to try these new tools and to read these new papers so that we can kind of interiorize it and be aware of what the users of AI do so that we can use this knowledge to build better apps for our AI users, for the GraphQL users. And what else? Yes, I think that being a manager is also something that makes me value this time as a part of my week, right? Because if I had a very meeting intense week, I've had all my one-to-ones, and that is my time to sit down and reconnect with the technical work if I didn't have much time, for example, during the week to do so, or just explore AI, as I said before. So really, we have, for example, a thread where each engineer says, I've been exploring this or that, and I've been taking a lot of inspiration from what other people have been doing. So also this sharing effect is really multiplying the level of things that you can explore, because then it gives also us a chance to chat about it, to have broader conversations. And I think it's also a tool as a manager to improve retention for my team members, to make them really excited about this time of the week. And yeah, being able to highly value this time also allows me to kind of lead by examples, right? I do not just preach to my team, you should really do your learning, well, then I ignore it, right? So I think it's important also for myself as a leader in the team to show that I highly value that time myself.
Yes, and that's setting that example. I love the fact that GraphQL set apart time for learning. So many companies say, oh, we offer time for personal learning, but nobody sets aside dedicated time for it, and it will just pass. And as you said, you might have seen something in the week and it passed, and you didn't set aside time to go back and actually explore that. But to be at a company that has dedicated time for learning, as you said, that would definitely help with retention and making sure that that company doesn't just care about your everyday project. It cares about you progressing.
About you, as a person, as an engineer, and we really like to work with each other. Ultimately, you like working with the people around you, and this really enriches the kind of conversations that we're having within the team.
Yes, I can imagine that. Yeah. We are almost out of time, but I've got one last question for you. Do you have any final advice for our listeners who are thinking about a career in AI?
Yeah, so I think I can relate to what we were saying earlier about, the preconception that one might have about entering the entry level for the world of AI is you need to have a PhD with this number of papers in the specific field of, I don't know, NLP or whatever other area in AI you might be interested in. I don't think that's true. I don't think you need to be a math wizard or to have a PhD in the field to get started. I think if you're passionate about it, I think just go for it, right? So you start from your programming skills. Those are foundational, and you need to feel comfortable in your programming to be able to speak the kind of AI language and feel comfortable in this environment. So first step, if you feel that those need some brushing up, just start from there before you deep dive in AI. And once you've done that, if you're not scared by, maths, probability, statistics, if that's not too daunting for you, ultimately, and if you are excited by problem solving, everything else can be learned. The AI frameworks can be learned, and you can definitely find your ways into AI careers. And there is not just the AI machine learning engineer type of career. There is also product managers, product owners, data scientists. There is so much, and there is so many online resources that can get you started. At this point, the online resources are even arranged in career paths already, or you can ask friends that work in the industry. And I think talking about learning, it's important to understand what is your learning pattern, how you thrive the best when you learn. So are you more theoretical? Are you more, applied kind of person? So would you benefit more from watching a video or reading a book, or from directly starting developing a small project? You kind of have to understand this for you, right? And also consider you will not be alone in this journey.
Yes.
When you succeed, there are
a lot of people feel that way. Yes.
Yeah. It's not going to happen. You're always going to have someone next to you. It can be a mentor. It can be your manager. When I joined, I had a buddy. I was the second engineer in the team. He was the first. He still works in my team. And I learned a lot from him, and I keep learning still today from all of my colleagues, all of my team members. So this is, as I said earlier, is one of the really things that I value the most of having a very heterogeneous team in terms of background and expertise, is that I'm able to really learn from everyone at the end of the day. And when you will then join a company, even if you come from a different background, you will still be able to bring a unique perspective to the table, and it will be really valued.
Yes, thank you for sharing that you can come from lots of different backgrounds going into tech. I think, and I've heard it so often, people find the tech industry very intimidating if they don't have those big hitting qualifications, and to hear it from somebody that is in an incredibly cool part of the tech industry as well, is, you know, people don't have to be afraid to come in and give things a try that are from all different backgrounds. Is definitely a message that we agree with at SheCanCode, and will continue to push. But Arianna, I could talk about this for so much longer, but we are already out of time. Thank you for such an enjoyable conversation. That was so interesting to hear about your day and life at GraphCore and life in AI. It was incredibly interesting. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Good, I'm pleased. Thank you. And for everybody listening, as always, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.